Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows or adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham. So in this episode, we kind of pick up where the previous episode left off with, Galavan coming back to life. But I mean, he has a little scatterbrain and a little, like, he doesn't remember himself at all. I mean, he remembers pieces, like he remembers like, oh, I had like a sister and stuff like this. But the main thing that's intact in his brain is that it's essentially a book that he's got memorized that's connected to his family lineage. And basically, Strange uses that to kind of create a new persona inside of his mind. Is essentially he takes a person from that book named Azrael, kind of like and basically tells Galavan, "Oh, I'm your dad, and you're actually Azrael, this fighter, to this person who went to hell and who's come back, who I've brought back to exact revenge, essentially." And he sicks him on Jim because Jim has come after him personally, because I like the little confrontation between him and Jim, and this is like Hugo sitting there just like, is this an interrogation? He's just like, no, I'm just asking questions. But he's like, he kind of tries to pick Jim apart, because he's kind of like, oh, you're saying you're doing this because obviously you're doing this for Bruce Wayne. You're thinking like it'll make up for all the past mistakes you made. You're thinking by doing this, hopefully you find some kind of redemption in all this, which on some level, that probably is what Jim is looking for. Because he ends up saying like, oh, Jim has all these tales because the way he, how like a psychiatrist will break you down and be like, oh, you have these certain tales that tells me that I'm right on the money. And then he basically handed Hugo a fake warrant saying that he'll get the information, like it was some kind of information he needed to get. Oh yeah, he needed to examine what's Mr. Freeze's real name? I keep forgetting. Victor Fry, isn't that it? Yeah, examine his body. And then, Hugo was like, no, I'm sorry, we cremated it. And he was just kind of like, you've got tails too, and that just told me, your tails just told me that I'm right. And Hugo ended up looking at an envelope in his empty that, Jim had bluffed, so that's why he kind of sent Galavan after him, which very, like, truth be told is, I mean, like I said, I'm not familiar with comic books, but I am slightly familiar with there being kind of vigilante characters in Gotham very similar to Batman. And that's what I kind of got from Azrael. And I'm pretty sure that's probably the point, because you kind of see Bruce looking at him kind of moving around and stuff. And that, it's probably like, oh, this is inspiring him to eventually become Batman later on. Because it's like, it's very interesting just how he operates, like, especially in the police station later on in episode when it's like dark in there, he's like taking people down one by one. I mean, granted, he's doing a lot more bloodier than Batman would, because he's slitting people's throats and thrusting swords to them. So it's like, that's kind of be a much bloodier version of how Batman would take people down. But it's kind of interesting. The fact is that Galavan can move like that. Granted, I did forget Galavan was actually pretty skilled when it came to fighting, because he whooped the hell out of Jim's ass that time. They kind of went hand to hand. Like, he is actually a pretty skilled guy. We haven't really seen his athleticism, kind of him being agile and nimble, kind of like he was. But I mean, I guess that was kind of just something that never came up. Or was that something that just kind of got supercharged along with, having super strength? I find it very interesting because, the DC universe is a mixture of a lot of different stuff. It's a mixture of, science fiction, supernatural, because there's like a lot of science fictional stuff, but there's also like magic in the DC universe. So it's kind of interesting to see, Gotham kind of transition to the more science fiction. We have Mr. Freeze, and now we have someone being resurrected from the dead and being kind of enhanced. Because it kind of constantly comes up in this episode. It's like, what's happening to Gotham? First, at the beginning of the season, you had the Maniacs, and now you have Galavan being dead and coming back to life. You have Mr. Freeze. It's just like Gotham has stepped up from, back from when it was just, mobsters you had to deal with. Now it's like a new slew of problems is coming. Because it's kind of interesting when you break it down, like, Gotham has a lot of, like, special powered villains, I mean, granted, a lot of them haven't stepped up to the plate in Gotham yet, it kind of makes sense because some of those particular characters, like take Poison Ivy for example, she's a little girl at this point, so she hasn't become the Poison Ivy. You know that she's going to eventually become with her powers to control and kind of control and speak to plants. So it's like that for instance. But I just think it's very interesting to see that transition like that, because even it's kind of interesting because you get to see the characters kind of react to it. It's like Gotham used to be, yeah, we used to have monsters, but now we have all this crap happening. It's like, what's happening to Gotham? You even have Jim actually telling his boss the truth, but his boss doesn't believe Jim is kind of crazy. He's like, you've lied to me so many times before. How am I supposed to believe you? Especially when you're telling me something crazy like this. He's like, basically, he was like, you're not, that basically, Jim calls out Barnes saying like, oh, you're not good at running the GCPT. He's like, oh, you think you can do better? He's like, yeah, I think I would. He's like, oh, you think you're going to lead it one day? He's like, yeah, I think I will. I'm like, okay. I was like, haha, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I was like, you literally took off your gloves and slapped me repeatedly with that one. It's just like, I know it's kind of interesting how this show is like, it's not like they try to hide it or like blatantly obvious, like reference, we're referencing Batman. It's just like, yeah, we all know Jim becomes the commissioner later on. Didn't he actually become commissioner temporarily earlier in the series? Maybe, I'm pretty sure that was kind of a temporary thing. I think stuff happened and he kind of fell back. Because he was replacing Loeb at that time, I think, wasn't it? I don't really remember. But, yeah. Another interesting thing that came up in this episode was the fact is that, it was kind of a conversation between Jim and Bruce, because it's kind of like, the fact is, Bruce was tired of the fact is that, like, they couldn't legally do anything against Hugo because the evidence wasn't even circumstantial evidence. There was very few little evidence to kind of tie him to anything, so they couldn't really act upon it. He's just kind of tired of like, oh, we have to play by the rules because the bad guys don't play by the rules, so why should we? He's basically saying like, you do things, sometimes you have to break the law. And he was like talking to Jim, he was like, basically, you just sometimes you have to step over that line. He's like, when you did it with Galavan wasn't someone that could just be left to his own devices. He had to be stopped, and you went about it the right way. And then Jim's correct him. He's like, no, I didn't go about it the right way. You think I did the right thing killing him? It wasn't that I didn't have a choice. It's not that that was the right thing to do. I made a choice, and a choice that he regrets. He's like, it's haunting him to this very moment. Like, he regrets killing Galavan, because he's like, at what point, at one point when you start acting the way, eventually you turn into, like, if you go about things the way they do, you end up becoming just as bad as the evil you're trying to fight. So he's teaching Bruce to kind of be more just, to hold justice more in higher regard, that you have to do things in a more justice sense. So another thing we saw in this episode, I just feel like pointing out, is the fact is Enigma. Like, I like how what he does in this episode, basically just manipulating his other cellmates. I do like the fact is when he's talking about, oh yeah, no, this guy doesn't call you fat. It wasn't him. It was the ghost inside of his head, and he's talking to him, and he's just like talking to the ghost. And it's like, oh, the ghost slapped me. The ghost pushed me and did all this. It's like, it's really, I don't know, it's very interesting to see that side of Enigma finally just being let loose, that he's not even hiding it anymore. Like, before now, he's always kind of had to hide it, but now he's just out in the open and like, yeah, I'm crazy and I manipulate people, and he does it so well. I mean, I guess granted, like, out of anyone in the entire prison, he's one of the smartest people there. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, I guess in intelligence wise, he'd probably rival Hugo. I mean, because you even see Hugo kind of doesn't want to even give him the time of the day. Hugo's like, oh, I mean, Enigma's like, oh, I can help you out. But Hugo's like, no, I'm here to help you, Edward. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I thought it was just kind of an interesting thing, especially because, Enigma ends up finding a way to Enigma's little, hidden lab where he's got all those experiments going down. And a very interesting thing I do want to bring up is like, is Captain Barnes dead? I know he got super messed up because Galavan stabbed him with the sword all the way through. Azrael, if you want to be all technical with it, stabbed him with the sword, with that broken off sword, and he had passed out. I don't think he's dead. I think he is just being shipped off to the hospital. But that's kind of the cool thing, is finding out that everyone now knows that Galavan's still alive, or at least he's brought back to life. We have Bruce finding out about it. He's pretty much chalks it up to Strange. You have Galavan's sister, which she was there with Barbara, who's still a little nutty. Even Butch is a little scared of her, being like, yeah, she's like, Galavan's sister's kind of like, she says she's fine. He's like, yeah, that's what a crazy person would say. And it's weird to see, like, it's kind of interesting, like, after her little confrontation with Jim last episode before last, she would seem normal and all okay, but, because she didn't get the response she wanted, it seems like she kind of fell apart again. Just seems like she's not, like I said, she seemed more stable and in control the last time we saw her, but now she just kind of fell apart again. It's kind of, like I said, kind of sad, but it's to be expected. But now everyone knows that Galavan's still alive, and the fact is that he's the one running around in this whole get up. I did like the fact is, apparently he has some kind of armor on and whatnot. Because he's able to take a whole bunch of bullets without anything. I was wondering at what point the mask was going to go off. I thought, like, at some point while he was knocked down, when they were still inside the GCPD, that they were going to take off the mask and reveal his Galavan. No, it's like after Barnes hit him with a pipe and knocked his mask off, and it was just like, oh, that's how it gets revealed. No, I had a feeling it had to be revealed. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting. I didn't think they were going to stretch that out. I thought they were going to hit people with that immediate feeling like, yeah, Galavan's still alive. Which is very interesting, because he saw a poster of himself kind of as mayor, and it kind of gave him flashes. He even saw his sister, because Strange kind of manipulated him into thinking that basically the pieces of his life that he knew were all fake. So it's kind of like I said, it's kind of interesting when you see, it makes you wonder, like, at what point this, like, what Strange does to people versus, like, who they really are breaks through. Because, like, with Penguin in this situation, all that reprogramming Strange did at, like, that conflict of, like, I feel like you always saw it a little bit, like, for a quick second, a little bit, like, him kind of like the other version of Penguin, the original Penguin inside of him, kind of trying to fight the programming that Strange did. And I was kind of looking at, it'd be kind of interesting to see that, though, because it's like Galavan, it really hasn't been presented to him that he's like someone else. He saw those posters, but he's still probably under the impression that they're lies, falsified by all these different people. And it's just like, at what point is he going to go completely nuts, because he's going to have his old life merging with the new life that's kind of been created for him as Azrael? Or will he ever return to the original Galavan? Will eventually he remember exactly who he was and cast it aside? Which I don't think for Strange that's going to be all that helpful for him. It's like, what if Galavan does remember who he is? What will Strange do then? Which we also saw him in this episode thinking about doing the same thing to other patients, basically like creating personalities and kind of new personas for them. Essentially, he was reading, and I think I can only assume from using context clues and just what he was reading that it was an Alice in Wonderland book, and just that little maniacal laugh he did afterwards is crazy. But I'm really interested to see where everything goes from here. Like I said, Galavan's running around. Everyone knows he's Galavan now. So it's like, what's going to happen? Like, how is Jim going to come after Strange now? Penguin now knows that Galavan's alive. I mean, though, let's not forget, Galavan did kill his mother, and he thought Galavan is dead. And then now he's currently back to being the old Penguin. It would have been interesting to see, like, how the new Penguin, like, after, everything with, Hugo's brainwashing, what that Penguin would have said and done about Hugo being back. But there's also, we also get to see the fact that he's still living in a house, and everything's kind of torn up, and his quote-unquote stepmother, I guess you could say, is her dead body is still laying at the table, facing the plate and everything. You can hear flies flying around. But anyway, it'd be kind of interesting to see what Penguin does. He's going to be consumed by revenge, and he's going to be trying to do everything he can to find Galavan and kill him. So it's not just Jim they're going to have to worry about. There's also Penguin. Granted, though, Penguin's on his own. He doesn't have the army that he used to, but still, he is a resourceful guy, so it'll be interesting to see what he does. So, but that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.